What did you really expect him to say? To back away from such a challenge? What am I talking about? Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com to learn more. Coming up on today's show, we're talking about some comments Jake Retzlaff made about the Heisman Trophy and why I think it's actually the right thing for him to say. We'll also talk about Dallin Hall and his entry into the NCAA transfer portal and why it may or may not be a loss for BYU hoops. And we'll finish off today's show talking a little bit more about the transfer portal and NIL. All right, so let's dive right in on today's show. There have been some comments making their way around the internet that Jake Retzlaff made earlier this week. Now, Monday, BYU made, I think it was like 5, 6, 7 players available for essentially end of spring thoughts to talk about the end of spring camp, get ready for the offseason, and essentially tied us as reporters over with a few extra tidbits that we might be able to utilize in future stories. Well, I had an opportunity to catch up with, I think I've got 4 or 5 players' interviews that I will be using in coming days on the podcast, but I did not get a chance to talk to Jake Retzlaff. I had an impending time crunch on me to get back to my radio station to co-host our afternoon show, but he did make these comments to multiple media members because I've seen them in the Salt Lake Tribune. I saw similar comments in the Daily Universe, BYU student newspaper, but Jake Retzlaff told reporters at this end of spring junket or whatever you want to term it, quote, I want to be at the Heisman ceremony. That's my goal personally. I don't think my ability is going to hold me back from that, unquote. Wow. Okay. So what I said in the open of today's show, why would you expect him to say anything other than that? There are Utah fans who are absolutely just glomming onto this and saying, I'll just leave this here. And it's like red meat for them to denigrate a guy who beat them. They have lost 2 straight to BYU, and 3 could be coming as soon as this October, and Jake Retzlaff could finish off his illustrious career as an undefeated quarterback against the Utes. I would expect literally nothing less than what Jake Retzlaff said to these reporters here. If he were to say, you know what, my goal is simply to finish my career with some decent stats, and we'll see how it all goes. No, you don't want that. You want an overachiever. You want a guy who believes, yes, that he can go to the Heisman ceremony and potentially hoist that trophy. Why in the heck wouldn't you want that? If you're a Utah fan watching this podcast, I don't know why you are. I would hope that your quarterback, Devon Dampier, is saying the exact same thing. Maybe he's not saying it into a microphone. Maybe he's not saying it to reporters at this point. But wouldn't you want that from your quarterback? A quarterback to gun for the biggest and best prize in all of college football? I sure as heck am okay with Jake Retzlaff saying this. He added this later, quote, I think I'm the caliber player who can be there in New York. That's going to start with success on the field as a team. That's what it really comes down to, making sure I am the best quarterback for this team, unquote. He absolutely has to deliver. Aaron Roderick, we've played the comments on this podcast in the past, has made it very clear in multiple media interviews that he has challenged Jake Retzlaff to up his completion percentage to 70%. He is expecting him to throw for 30-plus touchdowns, single-digit interceptions, and to go for 3,000, 3,500-plus yards. And they believe those numbers will elevate BYU football to an even more illustrious season than they had a year ago as an 11-2 team that finished in the top 15 nationally ranked. If he accomplishes those numbers, 70% completion percentage, let's say he goes 3,500, 4,000 yards, has 30-plus touchdowns against single-digit interceptions, a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio, he would absolutely be in the mix, especially if he leads BYU to another season like they had last year. Let's say they get to the Big 12 title game next year, and Jake Retzlaff has those type of numbers. He will absolutely being talked about as a dark horse Heisman Trophy contender. He will not go into this season as a Heisman Trophy candidate. I can be very blunt about that. I do not expect that. He will have very long odds from our friends at FanDuel. If you are interested in, putting some dinero down on that. But the bigger point to be made is that I believe that Jake Retzlaff has the right mindset on this, even if it seems far-fetched in your own mind. He also said this, quote, "If you told me 2 years ago I'd be talking about the Heisman, I don't think I would doubt that very much. I always believed in my process that would bear some great results. For me, it's about the process. It's weird talking about goals. Like, obviously, having goals is a good thing, but the goal doesn't matter if you don't have a process to get to it." And he talked about the fact that he expects to go 3,000 yards, 30-plus touchdowns, single-digit interceptions. If he can really go out there and accomplish that, as he continued on, quote, "I should be talking about the Heisman Trophy. I never thought about the NFL until I was getting recruited to play Division I football. Heisman Trophy, obviously, that's on the mind of a quarterback at a Division I college." So if you want to dunk on Jake Retzlaff, go right on ahead. But for one, I love the fact that the quarterback of the team that I cover professionally is absolutely not backing away from a goal that thousands, if not millions of us at one point, no matter how crazy it might have been in our minds, had dreams of hoisting that Heisman Trophy. Jake Retzlaff absolutely should gun for a chance to go to New York City at the end of the season, be sitting there when they announce the Heisman Trophy. That would be absolutely incredible if he accomplishes it. But as he mentions, you can always have goals, but you got to have a process to get to those goals. What is the process going to be to get Jake Retzlaff to the Heisman Trophy ceremony and, heaven forbid, hoisting that trophy? Well, it's going to require him leading BYU to an undefeated season, at least through the Big 12 title game. There's zero doubt about that. If Jake wants to be in New York, BYU's got to be essentially 12-0, maybe 11-1, with maybe the narrowest of narrow losses to another nationally ranked team. He also has to have the stats to back it up. He's got to have 3,500 at minimum passing yards. And as I mentioned, 30, 40 touchdowns, 5 to 9 interceptions, probably has to run for maybe another 500 to 1,000 yards more with another 10 touchdowns. Those are the type of numbers that seem absolutely nutso, but are the numbers that would propel him to this stated goal he has here. So once again, I respect the heck out of Jake that he's willing to step to a microphone and say that and put that red meat out there for his detractors. This is a kid, remember, last year, he had those quarterback rankings from Pro Football Focus that ranked him 16th out of 16 quarterbacks in the Big 12 on his phone, and he used that as motivation to propel him and the BYU football program to the heights they accomplished last year. If he can take another few steps forward, and they are pretty hefty steps, he'd be improving his completion percentage by more than 10 points. He'd be improving his passing yardage by multiple hundreds of yards. His touchdown to interception ratio would go from, it's kind of 1.2 to 1 right now to 3 to 1. Those numbers are not going to be easy to accomplish, but if he accomplishes them, yes, he very well could be dreaming and could realize his dream of being in New York City at that Heisman Trophy ceremony, if not hoisting that trophy. But I respect the fact that he's willing to say that into a microphone because it puts him on notice. And let's be very clear. There will be opposing fan bases, even elements of the Cougar fan base, Cougar Nation out there, who will be holding him accountable for those comments. But Jake, knowing what I know of this kid, he absolutely believes he has the ability to accomplish them, and we'll see how it all goes. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little BYU basketball. Dallin Hall has officially entered the NCAA transfer portal. What are the implications for BYU? Where does Kevin Young turn now? How does it impact potentially Yegor Demon's decision? We'll get into all that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Now, a lot of us have busy days and busy nights, but if you are feeling like you need an extra boost, 5 Hour Energy has your back. Whether you're staying up late to watch the NCAA tournament this weekend with the Final Four, squeezing in a round of golf after work with the extra daylight out there, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. And the best part is, obviously, you can take it wherever you are, no matter what you're doing, and it can give that extra energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com, by the way, right now and find over 15 different flavors, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango, among others. You can build your own 12 or 24 pack customized with the flavors you like delivered directly to your door. Or if you need one now, grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. But once again, get started today by visiting them at 5-Hour Energy or pick one up at your local convenience store. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well out there in Cougar Nation. All right, big news transfer portal wise yesterday was that Jake Retzlaff. Wow, that would be an incredible story. No, Dallin Hall has entered the NCAA transfer portal. Obviously, a guy who has some pretty iconic moments, that alley-oop dunk against Iowa State earlier on this past season, that incredible step-back three over Hunter Dickinson to clinch BYU's epic win at Kansas their first year in the Big 12 a year ago. He has had some really, really high moments at BYU, but he has decided that his future is better served elsewhere. And let me just say at the outset of this conversation, I wish Dallin Hall the best. If you read his statement, it reads as if he is fully intent on leaving Provo. And often when guys go into the NCAA transfer portal and pull their name out of the portal and go back to the program they were with, which is what happened last year with Dallin, but then the next year comes around and you do the exact same thing, yeah, you're all but out the door. So for the context of this podcast, I am going to say that Dallin Hall will not be back at BYU next year. Now, could things change? Absolutely. They can change literally on a dime, and a dime or 10,000 plus of those dimes, speaking of like a major NIL type influx of cash, could change a lot of minds. But barring that happening, Dallin Hall is going to leave a hole in the BYU lineup. There's just zero doubt about it. He was a guy that was fully intent, I think, on being BYU starting point guard this year, but Jaeger Demon took that job and he was never able to overtake Jaeger to get the job back. He is looking for a featured role as he goes into his senior season, and I fully understand why he wants to be a premier player on hopefully a premier program and have the impact he believes he can have in said program. It doesn't hurt that he can collect a pretty hefty NIL check alongside that, but the simple fact of the matter is, look at the lineup BYU potentially boasts next year. AJ DeBonsa comes in, and he is going to be the man, for lack of a better term, for Kevin Young and the BYU Cougars. He is coming in as the top-rated prospect in this recruiting class, and you can fully expect that things will run through AJ DeBonsa. You also have Richie Saunders, who I am expecting to return to BYU at this juncture, coming back off of a first-team all-conference performance, and obviously was the Big 12's most improved player. Those appear to be your two big guns next year for BYU in terms of packing the offensive punch and doing the things that will lead BYU to the glory they hope to accomplish. Then, if Jaeger Demon decides to return to BYU, he obviously would take on a featured role in his own right. Then you also add in the likes of Kevin Keita, Dawson Baker, Dominique Diomande, who we talked about earlier this week, who's already announced his commitment and /signing with BYU as a transfer from Washington. There are a lot of mouths to feed and not a lot of premier spots on the lineup that I believe is what Dallin Hall craves. He wants more of the spotlight, and every competitor understands that. I believe every human being out there wants a little bit more of the limelight, and that's what Dallin Hall is chasing here. So I wish him well as he exits the BYU basketball program. Now, with him leaving, obviously Elijah Crawford, who I would figure is your third string point guard, already in the portal, and Jaeger Demon's decision still pending. Very likely he could leave for the NBA draft. You could find yourself, speaking of Kevin Young, with a dearth of talent at the point guard position. Well, as we always say, the portal giveth and the portal taketh. Well, the portal has taken in this instance, but there are options out there that Kevin Young will be scrounging around, and he will evaluate all options. And the nice part is BYU has the means, the success, the track record, the system in terms of overall play on the court that I think will be highly, highly attractive to point guards to come in. Yes, you may have to sell a guy if Jaeger Demon decides to return to BYU that, hey, you have to understand you're playing second fiddle behind this guy as our backup point guard, but with how deep our rotation and we're willing to go with that rotation is, you will see plenty of playing time. Dallin Hall played quite a bit for BYU. And yes, the final stanza of this past season was not a good one for him. And I don't know what went into that. He dealt with some injury concerns early on in the season. Maybe those cropped up late in the season. Regardless, there is opportunity here on the table for BYU to go out there and add another talented player, via the transfer portal. And I wholeheartedly believe that Kevin Young understands that if he wants to get where he believes BYU can go, and that is challenging for a Final Four, playing for a national championship, you have to have top shelf talent. And he is chasing that via the high school ranks, via the transfer portal, and any other means, whether it's the European route, whatever it is. He will take all comers he believes can elevate BYU. And that's why I love me some Dallin Hall, but I'm also not going to be crying that he left the BYU basketball program, because I believe Kevin Young has got a really, really strong case to show that he is capable of A, upgrading that position, and B, that position being an even bigger strength than it already was this past season for the BYU basketball program. So yeah, I'm not fretting Dallin Hall leaving, and that may sound callous. That may sound like I've got an axe to grind with him. I've got zero axes to grind with Dallin. He was absolutely incredible with the media as a BYU Cougar. I also understand it's a business decision on his end. He doesn't want to play second fiddle, if at all possible, in his senior season of college basketball. He wants to improve his professional prospects. I completely understand every side of this, and I think all the way around, everybody can be happy with him exiting BYU and going to another program. That is why I believe that in this case, it could be a win-win-win all the way around for all parties involved, and everybody will come out ahead in the end if all goes well. Yes, injuries could scuttle that. Yes, failed promises on NIL could scuttle stuff like that. But right now, it appears, I think, everything is in line for BYU. And considering the caliber of what Dominique Diomande looks like for BYU right now, I've got major belief that Kevin Young will, A, find at least an adequate replacement, and I'm fully expecting him to find, in many respects, an upgrade over a guy like Dallin Hall. And Dallin's no slouch. He's a very, very capable power four level player, but Kevin Young's track record says that he will find of comparable, if not better, type talent out there in the portal or other means, whether, like I said, via Europe, via the high school ranks, be it what it is. And that's an exciting prospect, because Kevin Young, I think, sees the writing on the wall of what it will take to get BYU over that hump and have them challenging for national championships. And he will do everything that he can do with the means given to him, the resources given to him, his own charisma, his own personality, his style of play, everything he does as a coach. It will be geared towards getting BYU towards the upper echelon of college basketball. And that should be an exciting prospect if you're a BYU fan out there, because that's what we've all craved for years. We want to see BYU playing in the biggest games, on the biggest stages, and have an opportunity to win a national title. It's been much closer for many, many years for BYU football, it felt like, than BYU basketball. But in some respects, feels even closer for BYU basketball than BYU football finally, in the first time in quite some time. And that alone, I'm excited for it. So I wish, once again, Dallin Hall nothing but the best, but I'm also fully expecting that Kevin Young will use that roster spot and other roster spots that I'm sure will come open and find opportunities for them. Could Elijah Crawford return now that there appears to be an opening at point guard? He very well could, but that obviously has not been decided as of the recording of this podcast. And any updates, as always, that I have, they'll be first going to our Locked On Cougars Insider group. So just another plug for you guys to join us today to get that inside scoop coming to your phone in the form of a text message, literally in the moment I'm hearing and seeing the news, and also getting you my insight as well. So join us there, and obviously stay up to date on everything going on with the BYU Cougars. But I think in the end, this should, at least at the outset right now of everything going on, it looks like it will be I think a good situation and a win-win-win all the way around for Dallin Hall, BYU, and whatever program Dallin Hall ultimately lands with for his upcoming senior season. All right, we'll finish up today's show. NIL, it is the dominant force in the transfer portal. There's just zero doubt about it. Money talks. We always hear that from people out there. Well, it's talking, and I will explain more fully how it's talking and how it's benefiting BYU more so than I even thought it was. And we'll get into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, if you are having fun with this NCAA tournament, you can have even more fun with our friends at FanDuel. They are giving you the chance to get in on all the action like never before. Right now, new customers, you can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to bet on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to even who's cutting down the nets this coming weekend with the Final Four in the national championship. Obviously, all of us have been watching the tournament and trying to have our brackets work out. Well, if your bracket's busted, you can kind of reinvigorate some life into it with our friends at FanDuel. Tournament games happening all the time. There's always something exciting to bet on, and you can do it both live bets, you can do money line, no matter what you're into. The best part is the app is super simple and easy to use, and when you win, you get paid out instantly. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Go to FanDuel.com and cash in on up to $200 in bonus bets from our friends over at FanDuel. Now, today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Fabric. Now, I'm a dad. Obviously, I've got concerns that my family needs to be set up if the inexplicable happens, is what I should say. One day you're watching your kids obviously take the first steps as youngsters, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important, and that's where Fabric by Gerber Life comes in, making it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for that term life insurance online right from your couch. You'll be covered in as little as 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank along the way as well. And they offer free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future along the way as well. So get on this today. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege to get started today. Policies are issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices are subject to underwriting and health questions. But once again, get started today by going to meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Thursday edition. So the week has flown by. I've been very busy with my day job. I co-hosted our afternoon drive show on the KSL Sports Zone earlier this week, and it's really, the week has just kind of flown by. But bigger point I want to talk about as we close up shop on today's show is talk a little bit more about NIL and its impact in the transfer portal and how it is benefiting the BYU Cougars. Now, the conversation here is we've heard from guys, Paul Lillianquist, who was that booster that told Myron Medcalf from ESPN that, quote, "we will not be outbid," unquote. And that was a bold statement to come from a BYU booster. But here's the deal. BYU has a pile, and I use the term pile very willingly, of money when it comes to NIL. The biggest thing, a lot of these programs out there in the college basketball universe are essentially dealing with what they call a salary cap, if you want to term it that. They have essentially a set amount of money, of NIL money, they can offer to players, and they have to divvy it up however they will. Top tier players, according to reports out there I've seen, are requesting as much as $3 million and may even be requesting more than that when it comes to the transfer portal and what they're looking for when it comes to NIL. That's a hefty chunk of change. And there's not a lot of programs out there outside the Power Four, or I should say the Power Five, because the Big East is in this conversation, that I don't think will be able to match what some of those athletes are looking for. The thing about it is, I had a conversation with a person yesterday, and we were talking about other Big 12 programs, and they had some intel on, let's say, I'd say a middling Big 12 team. That's probably the term I would use for this program. I'm not going to name them because I'm just not going to burn a source like that. But the thing is, this, I would call middling Big 12 program, has an NIL budget apparently this year of $11 million. It's pretty hefty and nice chunk of change to have to be able to spread around to your athletes. Well, here's the deal. If BYU is not, as Mr. Lillianquist told ESPN, not going to be outbid, that means they've got 12, 13, 14, $15 million. What do they have? It feels like BYU has got infinite pockets, and if they have players out there, and I'm saying multiple players because there are multiple roster slots open currently, and Kevin Young ultimately will fill out a full roster of players, BYU is going to be forking over a considerable amount of money, especially if you believe that at the top end of the reports around AJ DeBonsa alone say that he's going to make $8.5 million on his own. That would chew up, was that 70% of that $11 million budget for this, like I said, a middling Big 12 team? It's nice to have BYU's boosters putting money where their mouths are. And they are doing exactly that. And if you are a Cougar fan who believes that NIL is ruining the sport or ruining what you love about college sports, I don't know what to tell you, because this is the reality. This is the era of college sports we live in. And now that it's above board, it's legal, everybody can do it. BYU has their ducks in a row. They have got supremely motivated boosters who have got infinitely deep pockets. And I know that guys like Ryan Smith are the poster children for this, but it's not just Ryan Smith. BYU's got dozens of boosters who have got net worths of, let's say, in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're willing to put the money up to put the best product on the court they can for the BYU basketball program. That's why a guy like AJ DeBonsa partially picked BYU. He said the money was all the same for these programs, but it was top tier money. Low end of the reports were $4.5 million. Top end, 8.5. It's still a ton of money. It would carve up a major chunk, like I said, of that $11 million budget for a program that's, I guess, what I would consider to be middling in the Big 12. And BYU is not even blinking an eye at it. And BYU could be, I don't even know what the reports are and what the expectations that Dominic Diomande is going to make in NIL, but I don't think he came cheap. I don't think anybody that BYU is chasing right now in the transfer portal was a guy like Silas Damari Jr. I know that he has a crystal ball from 24/7 Sports linking him to UConn. Well, he's not going to come cheap if he were to pick a program like BYU. There is going to be a lot of money flowing around for BYU when it comes to the transfer portal, but enjoy it, because BYU is a Leviathan and they have other programs, boosters, coaches, administrators quaking in the boots, to use that expression, wondering how we ever going to be able to compete with that. And that, I'm fully on board with it. I love the fact that BYU is kind of on the opposite side of things after years and decades of being an athletic department in a university that always said, hey, we do more with less. I've said it often on this podcast, who are longtime everydayers, do more with more. Well, that's what BYU is endeavoring to do right now. They've got more, and they are going to hopefully do more with that more. That makes sense? But the bigger point is, BYU is going to be a force in college basketball so long as the NIL funds continue to be there for them to wade into. I have never been told in all my conversations with people in and around BYU sports that there is one of those proverbial salary caps for BYU football or BYU basketball. That means to me, in many respects, I feel like BYU has this infinite pool of money that they can dip into. And especially when it comes to BYU basketball, that appears those purse strings are wide open. And if Kevin Young feels like he needs the amount of money to get a player to BYU, that money will be there for him to get that player there. Now, it's not always going to be just about the money. A lot of guys are supremely motivated by how much NIL money they can make. I think that Dallin Hall is motivated by it. I think literally everybody out there in the entire world is motivated by money. You tell me that I could double my salary, quadruple it, whatever it might be, at a different, let's say in my case as a radio producer, you tell me that X company in this state says, hey, Jake, we know that you're making this much money. We'll triple or quadruple your money. I'm asking them, where do I sign? I don't think I'm alone in that. I think almost 98% of you would do the exact same thing if you could double, triple, or even quadruple your money. That's what's happening for some of these guys, speaking of the athletes in the transfer portal. And BYU, they're going to make a bunch of young men very, very rich, chief among them a guy like AJ DeBonsa. They will also reward guys who are already on the roster. I fully expect a guy like Richie Saunders, should he come back to BYU, he will get a massive raise when it comes to NIL. Same thing with Jaeger Demon. Anybody who's on that roster who had an impact this past year and is looking for an increase, I would fully expect that they will make sure that they are taken care of from that perspective. The other thing coming into effect coming up this summer is that player revenue share. Up to $20.5 million is going to be spread around amongst BYU athletes. Yes, the majority of it, as I understand it, will be going towards BYU football, but there's still going to be, according to reports, $4 to $5 million available of that money that can also be spread around from the university directly to these athletes. There's a lot going for BYU, and it sure feels like BYU has got a lot going for itself, and I hope it pays off. I hope that Kevin Young gets the type of talent into BYU. Kalani Sitake gets the type of talent into the BYU football program, and they can watch BYU flourish on national stage. Cougar Nation wants nothing more than to see BYU on top of the college sports universe. And with the amount of money BYU apparently, or at least it appears, is willing to spend, they should be able to stay near the top, if not competing for it all, if they get obviously the right investments and the right players in the right spaces, etc. It looks very, very promising for BYU. And I, for one, I'm excited to cover it all as always. So once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all having a fantastic day whenever you hear and or watch this. Please continue to subscribe, rate, review, share this with your family and friends. Comment on the show. Let me know what you guys think, whether it's in the YouTube comments, via social media, or email. Reach out anytime you guys would like to chat. But as always, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.